Mark, who was in his 50s, had spent more than 20 years as a taxi driver in the city of Dallas. He was a respectable man in the neighborhood and a father of 2 children. His professional record was free from any complaints to the taxi regulation police. Those who knew him well knew that the man had set a primary goal for himself: to do everything he could to provide the best conditions for his children to continue their education. He saw that as the best investment he could make. Days were no different for Mark, but on July 13th, something unusual happened. On that evening, as he was driving his car, a woman suddenly waved to him in a dimly lit area, holding a bag in her hand. Mark stopped, and the woman got into his car with her bag, saying she needed to go to the train station. The car headed towards its destination, and as they approached a crowded station, she asked Mark to slow down. Then, when they were by the station's entrance, she paid him and hurriedly disappeared into the crowd. It was nearly 11 at night. Mark thought about going back home, but as he was parking his car in the lot, he heard a baby's cry coming from the back seat of the car. He got out, opened the rear door, and found the bag the woman had with her. To his surprise, there was a baby inside the bag. When he looked at the baby, he estimated that she was born just a day or 2 ago. Mark stood there, unsure of what to do. Would he take the baby to the police station, or would he take her to an orphanage? He realized that either way, he would have to reveal his identity, and it wouldn't make much difference whether he took the baby to the police or an orphanage. The only option left for him was to take the baby home with him, hoping that the woman would come back to look for her. He intended to discuss the possibility of adopting the child with his wife. When he arrived home, his wife examined the newborn and revealed that it was a girl. Mark was overjoyed and suggested adopting her, as his wife had only given birth to 2 boys. He expected his wife to be delighted with this proposal, but suddenly she erupted in anger, accusing him of things he had never even considered. She shouted and cursed him, and that night Mark couldn't sleep as she continued to berate him. He prayed for his innocence to be proven and for the woman who had abandoned her baby to come back and find her in a taxi office, or for his wife's heart to soften and accept adopting the baby who should not pay the price for a crime she did not commit. His wife sat on the couch, still furiously interrogating him about who the baby's mother might be. That woman, whose heart had been devoid of mercy and motherhood, leaving her child and disappearing. Mark felt that he needed to propose a solution to his wife, thinking it would silence her and end her accusations. He suggested to her that they undergo a lab test to compare the baby's blood sample with his, to prove that she wasn't his daughter. His wife agreed and told him to go to the lab immediately. He couldn't back down or procrastinate. He took the baby, and his wife followed him to the car park, sitting in the back seat, still visibly angry. After a few minutes, they were at the medical lab and they took blood samples. However, they were informed that the test results would take 3 days to be ready. Mark was absolutely sure that the lab results would prove his innocence. So, while they were on their way back home, he asked his wife to stop talking about the baby and to take care of her. It was like a ceasefire. That day, he decided to sleep well and not work until the afternoon. When he woke up, he got in his car and went to work. On his way, he noticed a woman watching him who seemed to resemble the one who had left the baby in his car, but he didn't dare speak to her. The next day, he saw the same woman watching him as he parked his car. She approached him and got into his car, asking him to take her to where her baby was, the one she had left in his car 2 days ago. Mark looked at the woman. She seemed embarrassed, her cheeks turning red and tears welling up in her eyes. After a distance, Mark pulled over under a tree by the side of the road and turned to her. He looked deep into her eyes and asked her to tell him her story. She said that she had met a young man and had become attached to him. He also seemed to have feelings for her. When she realized she was pregnant, she asked him to settle things, but he refused. She wanted to get far away from Dallas. Mark listened to her in silence. He knew that the results of the medical tests would be available the next day, and he didn't want to hand the baby back to her before proving his innocence to his wife. He asked the young woman to come back to him in 3 days, assuring her that the baby was at his home and was receiving proper care. She refused to disclose her whereabouts and gave him her phone number, arranging to meet again in 3 days. The next day, Mark went to the medical testing center, and to his shock, he discovered that the baby was not his, and that, in any case, he could not be the father because he was sterile. He couldn't believe what he had heard. Could he really be sterile and have 2 children? He felt dizzy and had a severe headache, then fainted. When he woke up, the pharmacist confirmed that the test results were accurate. He suggested another test for confirmation in the evening. The results of the evening test confirmed his sterility. Mark became convinced that there was betrayal behind all of this, and that his wife had taken a lover and become pregnant by him. That night, various scenarios played out in his mind. He thought about killing her and the 2 children, then committing suicide. But he reconsidered. Ultimately, he decided to disappear. He called the baby's mother and arranged to meet her at a cafe. She didn't expect him to propose to her and offer to adopt her daughter. He didn't want to dig into who his wife's cheating lover was. He wanted to leave. After 2 days, while his wife was at the market, he gathered his belongings and documents, took the baby, and left a note for his wife and a copy of the test results, then vanished. He went to the young woman's house, married her, and adopted the baby as his own daughter. After 8 months, he was summoned to the police station. His wife was searching for him. He refused categorically to let her know his current address.
Stay tuned for a new story. We'll be with you.